On this third segment, we are going to talk about the MVP ladder as of right now. And given the recent games, it's no surprise that number one on the MVP ladder is Joel Embiid. And trailing him right now is Nikola Jokic. Those are the top two players ranked in MVP voting right now. They are the two favorites, without a doubt. And the next players right below that is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, if you notice, it's all international players that are in the top five, because below that is Luka Doncic. So all international players are in the top five for MVP right now, which is pretty impressive. Now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander recently passed Giannis Antetokounmpo for being one of the favorites in MVP voting. Obviously, that's really a huge accomplishment because for the last few years, the last 2-3 years, Giannis has always been a lock for being top three in MVP voting. It's basically a given for him to either be a runner-up, win it, or be a top three in every single year. Same with Nikola Jokic. It's always given for him to be a top two, top three, and the same with Joel Embiid. You can't really topple those three, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does just that, being the one player on the best team in the West, in my personal opinion, right now, which is the Oklahoma City Thunder. I believe that team is right now very well suited. Do I think that they will win it all in the postseason? If they can keep this up, yes, because I have no question about them in the regular season. I'm just worried about them in the postseason because I haven't seen Shai Gilgeous play in the postseason like I did Nikola Jokic. So can't necessarily say that he's going to make a deep run. So obviously behind Giannis Antetokounmpo, there's Luka Doncic. I mentioned earlier that Luka Doncic always finds his way being number one in the MVP voting at the beginning of every single year. But every single year, he ends up being out of number one, and he ends up being in like the bottom of the top five, which isn't bad because Luka Doncic is a phenomenal player. Being a bottom top five MVP caliber player is not bad whatsoever. But seeing as how it's Luka Doncic being the favorite, a very big fan favorite, and being the favorite to win MVP practically every single year, it's kind of funny how he drops at the bottom of the tier list every single time. Now, Jason Tatum is directly below Luka Doncic. I don't mind Jason Tatum being directly below Luka Doncic. Jason Tatum is one of those players where it's like he deserves to be involved in MVP talks, but he doesn't necessarily need to be brought up all the time. He's in that mediocre category where we all know his value, but he's on a very good team with a very good system. So we drop a couple of points for that because he's not even, while he might be the best player on his team, he's not the most paid player on his team right now. Not to mention, the team is loaded with talent. So him being the best player is just about the only impressive part about his game at this point, and is what he has going for him in the MVP ladder. His game is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, but the way that the MVP is determined is determined with how much help you have and the numbers that you're producing. So with the amount of help that Jason Tatum has with the starting lineup he has, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, himself, and Derek White, and with how they're playing, that is a very, very good starting five. So he's obviously going to get docked a couple of points on the MVP voting simply because of the elite squad that he has. Domantas Sabonis is directly below him. I don't understand why Domantas Sabonis is on there. Does not make any sense to me. The Kings, they don't necessarily have a good win percentage to even be on here. Same with Anthony Davis being on here. The Lakers don't have a great win percentage for Anthony Davis to be on here, so I don't understand why these two big men are both on here. It might be because they both average double-doubles, which is a very good counting stat, very good total stats, a very good PER efficiency stat. Tyrese Halliburton is 9th in MVP voting, which is one of the things that I fully disagree with. Tyrese Halliburton does not play defense. He is a one-sided player. As good as a one-sided player as he is, I don't see the appeal of him being he's a very talented passer, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people give him more credit for his passing than they do for his actual abilities on the floor, and I don't necessarily like it because I feel like it's overrating a lot of the other point guards who can play make, but it's just they don't get the assist numbers. Now, Tyrese particularly looks for the assists, and he makes the passes, obviously, but the players also make the shot. They run a very fast-paced offense, and their defense obviously lacks because while their offense might be going in very fast and in a very fast-paced manner, the other team's offense is also going. So that's the reason why most of their teams, while they end up scoring a lot against all those teams, they also end up giving up a lot of points against those teams. So that's my personal opinion. I don't understand why Tyrese is on this list. Kawhi Leonard being on this list at the top 10, at the bottom of the top 10, not a bad inclusion. I feel like he should be a little bit higher up simply because of how well the Clippers are doing. Then again, all the players are contributing to the Clippers' success, so it might not necessarily be because of Kawhi Leonard and his prowess in the regular season, but still. Now, once again, I mentioned how I don't understand why Tyrese should be on this list. Who would I replace him with? Donovan Mitchell. He's on the Cavs. He's been leading the Cavs to a much higher seed than the Pacers are with Tyrese Halliburton, not to mention how the Cavs don't have Darius Garland at the moment, and you could argue that Kawhi should have higher odds to win the MVP than Tyrese, moving Tyrese down to the bottom 10. Now, even with Tyrese on this list, that doesn't change the fact that I think Anthony Davis should also be removed completely from this list. Doesn't really make much sense to me how none of the players on the Clippers, like Paul George or James Harden, I mean, personally, I think Paul George over James Harden just because Paul George is averaging much better numbers this year, should be under a player such as Tyrese. I don't understand that. Maybe it's because I'm old school, but to me, that doesn't make much sense. Luka doesn't have the win percentage. I mentioned win percentage before being a reason why I don't think Sabonis or Anthony Davis should be on this list. Luka doesn't have the might not necessarily have the high win percentage either, but he has the high numbers, so he's definitely guaranteed to be on these types of lists. Giannis Antetokounmpo, clearly the best player on the second best team in the East right now, the Milwaukee Bucks, but Shai is higher than him because right now Shai is currently the best player on the second best team in the West, in the Oklahoma City Thunder. Shai mainly was able to pass Giannis because of his great defense, getting the steals. So because he's able to get these steals now, he's moving up in these rankings. I don't think it'll be enough to catch Embiid or Jokic. They seem to be running away with this award. As I said in the previous segment, Luka always gets into these MVP talks early, but then he ends up fading out. And as I said before, don't agree with Sabonis being on this list. I'm also very surprised that Kevin Durant has not been included on this list. He's a very strong offensive player. He's on a very strong offensive team, but that team has also been a little injury prone, with Bradley Beal not playing a bunch of games. Devin Booker is a little bit lower in the voting. So I guess that makes sense why Kevin Durant isn't higher up in the voting, because Devin Booker also claims a spot just below the top 10. But still, I feel like you should consider Kevin Durant, especially now with the performance that he's having and the performances that he's had. He's definitely making a statement for himself to be in the MVP talks. At this rate, though, again, nothing is probably going to stop Embiid or Jokic. So they might as well run away with this award at this point, similar to how Victor Wembanyama is going to run away with the Rookie of the Year, and that is going to be our fourth segment. We're going to talk about Victor Wembanyama absolutely running away with Rookie of the Year, in my personal opinion. We're going to deep dive further into that after a very short break.